Hello, I was originally going to make a single video about how search engines and social media companies manipulate the information you see. Having started on the editing of this video, I've realised there's so much information, it would be a rather long and torturous video if it was done in one go, so I'm splitting it up into two parts. This video covers search engines. You'll see my information on social media in a separate video. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Do you trust the information you get off search engines and social media? And should you? In this week's episode, I'm going to talk about the concepts of neutrality and censorship and how they're used on the internet. So if you want to know whether the internet giants are telling you the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, then this episode is for you. I'm Terry and this is Web Safety Guru. So to start with, I want you to imagine that you need to buy a chair online. Now, the first thing you might want to do is decide what type of chair you want. So what determines which results Google gives you when you start looking for a leather chair? Well, it's actually quite complicated. The very first contract I did, and this is more years ago than I care to remember, I worked for something called a digital marketing agency. And their task is to get companies who are trying to sell things to get their websites as high up in the Google rankings as possible. One of the things I learned at a very early stage was that Google has a complex algorithm that determines what things come up first. This can be based on the age of the websites, how many links it's got. It's actually changed recently to quality links rather than the amount of links. All sorts of things to do with its reputation, its location. So if you're in London, it will bring up more local stuff. It won't give you something in Oregon, for example. But the whole list of factors anyway. And the important thing is that Google keep changing their recipe periodically so that no one can work it out. Google makes a hell of a lot of money out of advertising. And if anyone can work out exactly how Google's algorithms work, they're making a lot of money off Google and Google's losing customers. So Google... It's like the Coca-Cola recipe. It's known to only a tiny handful of people. But unlike Coca-Cola, Google keep changing their recipe so that clever people can't work it out. So returning to the example of the leather chair we talked about earlier, you would only really be interested on the chairs you'd find on page 1, maybe page 2. You're not going to go through hundreds of pages of chairs. And in fact, one of the big metrics in online marketing is how well you can get your site in the top half of the first page. That's where all the action is, which is basically the top 10 results that Google will bring up. So it's absolutely vital to have what's called your search engine optimization. So that's all well and good. We've established that Google has some sort of secret formula that it uses and it changes that formula. That's fine. Basically, it rigs its own data to suppress certain information from coming out. Now, there could be 100 reasons for this, and some of them are fair and legitimate. You wouldn't want to see it on BBC One before 9 p.m. You wouldn't want Google to bring it out on their first page. That's perfectly fine. Where things get a little dangerous is that Google have started dabbling in political interference. You may be aware that Google's motto is "Don't be evil," which is quite ironic, really, given some of the things Google has actually been involved with. I think the absolute worst thing Google has done is they've got involved in something called the Great Firewall of China. This allows them to apply censorship on behalf of the Chinese government. As I'm sure you're aware, the Chinese government is nominally communist, and it's certainly a dictatorship, and they go to great lengths to cover information up. The biggest example I can give you about this is that if you're in China and you type in 4th of June 1989 or Tiananmen Square massacre, you will not get any information out of it. Indeed, Google would have the ability to know the IP addresses of people even searching for these things, which if they gave that to the Chinese government would be terrifying. I don't know whether they have or whether they haven't. But the simple fact is that Google censors things as fundamental as the Tiananmen Square massacre from the people of China. So you can imagine how they could apply exactly the same principles to the Western world. Too much power is basically being given to tech companies who act in a way that isn't easily understood by the general public. Now, in previous videos, I've occasionally made joking references to DuckDuckGo on the grounds that it's the browser that doesn't track you. However, they are not spotless in this field either. It became clear earlier in 2022 that DuckDuckGo had been rigging their search results to suppress certain information. Now, I'm not here on behalf of the Russian government, far from it. I completely support Ukraine and what's going on in the world at the moment. However, what DuckDuckGo's chief executive has admitted is that they deliberately suppress search results from the Russian perspective. Yeah, sure, I may or may not wish to read the Russian angle on things, but should a search engine be actively suppressing information? I would say no. I think every piece of information should be out there. So I can see why they're doing it, but they shouldn't be doing it, because they might be doing it against the bad guy this time, but who's to say who they'll be doing it against next time? So search engine suppression of results could apply in two ways. Using the Chinese model with the Great Firewall of China, Google can stop information about the Tiananmen Square massacre being displayed at all. In the case of the suppression of Russian information on the Russian-Ukraine war, DuckDuckGo have just changed their algorithm to make it come out much lower so that less people will find it. Two different ways of skinning the same cat. One is total and absolute, and one has the same effect, but the information is still there. So in the latter case, all they're doing is loading the dice to make certain information not come out as high up. So if you want to get your information on the Russia-Ukraine war from a search engine, you're going to get most of your information from pages 1 and 2 and not page 37. And that's basically what DuckDuckGo admitted they were doing. They were bumping down certain information to lower pages. So the big takeout from this is that the information you see on a search engine is the information the search engine wants you to see. I think we'd all agree that it's perfectly okay for search engines to ban particular kinds of content. And I think we could all come up with a list of things that search engines should be suppressing entirely. For example, glorification of terrorism, cruelty to animals. I think we'd all agree that it's perfectly right and proper for search engines to ban misinformation such as fake websites. After all, in a video a couple of weeks ago, I showed you just how easy it was to make a fake web page. And you wouldn't want Dave from up the road pretending to be Barclays Bank, and then his Barclays Bank being higher in the search results than the real one. So rightly or wrongly, search engines do manipulate the results that you see. In the next video, I'll explain how social media gets involved in censorship. Make sure you subscribe and you'll receive a notification when there's a new video on the channel. Please like and share this video, it helps spread the word. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. And until next time, stay safe online.